Alrighty, welcome back to Time to Write, Episode 3, National Writers Month. Now watch this, ready? Boom! Would you look at that? How'd that get there? NaNoWriMo by TTW? What? Okay, now it's time to talk about National Writers Month. Now, I'm by no means a professional writer. I don't even have a published book. Now, writing doesn't need to be professional. That's the great thing about writing. Writing can be acceptable to anything. You could write the most worst poem, but it still exists. It's still writing. Therefore, it still counts towards anything you're doing. One of the worst thoughts you can have during National Writers Month is that the thought that you really need to make your work edited and published. You do not. It's a first draft. I cannot stress this enough. You should write in National Writers Month badly, honestly. If you can write good, but it is okay and it is acceptable to write bad. Everyone, especially me during National Writers Month, I really thought that I needed to make my work very edited and very published and very perfect, right? Looking back on my National Writers Month, it is the worst writing I've ever done. Bad editing, bad storyline, bad things, bad words, bad sentences, bad plot structures, literally everything. But with all those negatives combined, it still is writing. And at the end of the day, it still is writing. So did I really fail? Now, what is National Writers Month? I kind of just yapped for the first minute because I'm not good with intros, but National Writers Month is a novel writing month in November where all the authors come together and they try and write a book, which is loosely defined as 50,000 words in 1 month. Now, this is a very tricky challenge. I tried to conquer it in May, and I got 50,030 words on the dot. So this is by no means an easy challenge. To some, yes, to others, no. Like myself, it is pretty hard of a challenge. It's 31 days of consistently writing around 2,500 or 2,600 words, somewhere around that ballpark. Now, during National Writers Month, there's a lot of things going on. First off, you're writing a book in the month, which is a big deal. Second off, you have to consistently write, which really gets you into that deadline sort of space where you can understand how you need to write on time. But it also helps because it tones the mind to writing very fastly and writing very large amounts of work. It may not be your best work, but it's your first draft. Remember that. It's your first draft. Now, I corrected my mistake of thinking in National Writers Month that it needed to be perfect. It was very easy because within the first 500 words, it already took 2 hours, and I was like, we just need to start writing sloppy almost. So I started to do that. I started to outline what I needed to write, and then I started writing small things on that, which eventually pushed me over the 50,000 barrier. But for that first day, I almost gave up because I was sitting there like, this is really bad. But yet again, it's also, it exists right now. I have a book in my notes that exists. It may not be the best writing, but it is the first draft of the story. Yeah, during this challenge, it is okay to fail. You do not need to succeed. Yet again, we all want to succeed in life, so it's a bit troublesome there. But it is a hard challenge, coming from someone who actually has done the challenge just barely by 30 words, mind you. That is around a sentence or 2 sentences. But if anything, failing will motivate you more, because if you fail during National Writers Month, you have to wait a whole nother year. But you can do your National Writers Month whenever. You do not need to wait until November. I personally started very early in the year. I did my National Writers Month in May, which technically isn't National Writers Month. It was more just my Writers Month. But I did that in May because I was very excited and very motivated. And that motivation kept me alive during the entire challenge. Now, before you go into National Writers Month, please plan your stories. Unless you were going in fully blind, please plan your stories. I went into National Writers Month with around 4 to 5 major events, right? These were things that I wanted to get to, and I didn't really know how they were going to connect, but they had to connect somehow. And that was more of a, I have to think of it in the moment type situation, which really halted my entire story. there's parts of my story that don't make sense because it's just the transition between one major event to the next major event, which just does not connect in any way, shape, or form. Then there is also just loose plot holes. I started to make up characters as I wrote. Before I went into the month, I had around 30% of the story understood. I knew the character names, I knew what they had to do, what they needed to do, their motivations, their purpose. But looking back on the entire story now, it's more like 30% of it was planned and 70% of it was just random things I had to make up along the way, which really, 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 really halted my impact. Now, like I was saying just a bit before, it is okay to fail. And on that contrary, it is okay to tone down the difficulty. I personally do not want to write 50,000 words again, because that was very hard. Now, I personally toned down the difficulty. I went from writing 50,000 words last May to, in this coming November, I'm going to aim for around 27,000 words, which is around half of what I did before. And that's mainly because I want to edit it and actually make it a good piece of writing. I want to get it through almost the second draft stage before November really ends. Now, of course, we're going to be logging all of it here on YouTube, so if you do like that, keep watching, please. Oh, and also TikTok. Completely forgot about that. I am active on both TikTok and YouTube, and that's about it. So taking those major tips, which is to stay motivated, if you really do want to finish the challenge, please stay motivated. You have to finish it if you are motivated. Listen to music, that's another great tip. I'm just starting to make tips on the fly. Listen to music, so do that helps immensely. Tone down the difficulty if needed, right? There is no shame in toning down the difficulty. And the final point is it is okay to fail. And it is okay for your writing to be bad, okay? This is your first draft. Your first draft. It's not your second, it's not your third, it's not your 143rd. This is your first draft. Therefore, it does not need to be pretty, it does not need to be perfect, and it definitely does not need to meet standards of publishing an actual novel. So yet again, you do not need to be the best writer during National Writers Month. You do not need to write perfectly, you do not need to stay with the same difficulty, and you do not need to push yourself. At the end of the day, writing 50,000 words burnt me out for like 2 months. I pretty much didn't write. I just started to sleep all day and every day, which was very bad, and it's mainly because I'm lazy, but the point there is that National Writers Month will do a toll on you. You'll feel it within the first 4 days. It'll just be draining you constantly. But around that day 16, day 17, maybe even day 20 mark, you'll start to feel proud and you'll start to feel almost happy where you're sitting, right? You'll start to look at your words and go, wow, I'm around that 10,000, 20,000, maybe even 35,000 mark around that day. And you'll start to be very proud of that. And that's like the worst part, right? If you can make it through the first 5 days and you're still struggling, that is okay. But really the worst part is the climax of November, right? The very tip of the end, so I'm talking like day 26, day 28, around that ballpark. That is the worst part because you are so close to finishing, yet you are so far from the beginning that you have to continue. Now, I am going to be posting my National Writers Month here on YouTube as like little short, maybe 1 minute, maybe to 5 minute short videos on what I'm doing that month, what I'm doing that day, and what the story is maybe unfolding. I thought about maybe retelling the story to you guys as the chapters progress, meaning around that day 16, 17 mark, you'll be able to understand the full story maybe. I don't know, I haven't really thought that far. I definitely don't want to log all my progress here on YouTube and TikTok. But yeah, that's about it. That's really all the tips and tricks I have for you guys. Yet again, I'm not a professional writer, so take my tips and tricks with a grain of salt. That's just what worked for me. Staying motivated, listening to music, being okay with failing, and being okay with turning down the difficulty. There was a point in the challenge, and I think it was around day 18, where I was down 5,000 words, meaning I needed to catch up to 5,000 words plus the daily quota, meaning I was almost 6,000 words behind. And that day I sat down and I looked towards one of my idols, and he actually responded back to a comment, not on this channel, but he responded back to me, and I sat there and I wrote almost all 6,000 words that day. And I don't know what overtook me or what overcome me in that moment, but I just started to write like nobody's business. That's where almost the climax of my challenge came in last May. That was the part where I just sat down. I didn't talk for like 6 hours, and I just wrote. I think there was like 1 or 2 breaks during the entire 6-hour period, right? That is the motivation you want. Now, you do not need to be doing that. If you can write moderately fast, you can write pretty much all of it in 2 to maybe 4 hours. And when I say all of it, I mean average quota for 50,000 words is around 2,500 words per day. So yeah, again, you do not need to write all of that 6,000 like I did. Yet again, I was behind by quite a lot still. But yeah, that's really all I have. Hopefully we can vlog all this series on YouTube, so stick around for that. That'll be tomorrow. Yeah, that'll be tomorrow, the day after that, and all of November. We'll have one video hopefully posted every day. There may be a delay, meaning the next video might come out tomorrow, or in that contrary, but yeah, again, I can't promise anything. I myself am from the past, so future me might be thinking differently. Yeah, it's been hopefully a great National Writers Month for you all watching in the future. And for anyone who is currently in it, I hope a great challenge, and I hope you achieve your goals. And I really hope you're proud of what you make at the end. Because at the end of the day, it may not be the best writing, but it still exists, and it is still the first draft. You did complete your goal. So, happy National Writers Month in the next day, or the next 12 hours for me. But yeah, if you guys want to come do smaller logs, like on comments and whatnot, because I want to see what the writers are like writing this month. Now, yet again, one last thing before I have to go. You do not need to post your work on the National Writers Month website. It is totally okay to just keep it to yourself and still participate in the month. That is what I'm doing. I'm not logging anything on the National Writers Month. I don't even think I'll be logging like the full chapters through here until I have it to a pretty nice version where then I can send it off to you guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys have a nice National Writers Month. That is all. Stay motivated, stay listening to music, stay reading, stay writing, and stay loving literature and everything in between. I am TTW, and that's a wrap. Bye.